What does gutsy mean to you?
Gutsy to me is just like taking the leap, even if you're not sure about what you're going to land on.
Welcome to the Gutsy Podcast, the show where you learn how to own what you actually want and shift the mind junk that's been holding you back. I'm LauraAura, keynote speaker, coach, and your guide to help you get clarity, build confidence, and make the gutsy moves that change your life. Each week, I'm going to help you simplify things by teaching you how to get out of your head while stepping into action. This way you can achieve all those life shifts that you've been overthinking. Your desire, that drives you. But gutsy, that's what gets it done. Do you ever hit a point in your business where things are working, but they're not really growing? You know, where you keep ending the year at the same revenue level, you keep hitting the same numbers, and you can't figure out how to break past it. It's maddening, isn't it? Well, today's conversation is for you, my friend. I'm joined by Frenchie Ferenczi, a growth strategist who helps business owners navigate revenue plateaus with clarity, realism, and strategy, all without burning themselves out or forcing growth that doesn't fit their season. We're talking about why plateaus happen in the first place, how to tell if it's actually time to grow or simply time to stabilize, and what it really takes to create sustainable momentum again. This is an honest, grounding conversation for anybody who's been feeling stuck, frustrated, or quietly wondering, is this it? Frenchie is a small business strategist, fractional executive, and growth advisor who helps founders and small teams grow with clarity and momentum. She's worked with thousands of entrepreneurs and brands like The Wing, Origin, Ula, and Newhouse. Through focused strategy sessions, founder coaching, and fractional leadership support, Frenchie helps businesses prioritize what drives revenue, retention, and resonance, all so they can grow sustainably without burning themselves out. And her work has been featured in places like Forbes, Financial Times, and Fast Company. There's a question that Frenchie asks in here that I want to make sure that I'm planting a seed for you to hear now so that it lands even deeper when we get to it. And the question is, why do I want this? Let's get into it. Frenchie, welcome to the Gutsy Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We're talking about something exhilarating today. But so necessary because this is the other side of entrepreneurship that people rarely see. And I think it's these conversations that we have to have time and space for, to one, know that you're not alone. And
Yep.
two, just to get, a glimmer of some next steps to know how to move through it. So thanks for coming on to talk to us about revenue plateaus today.
Everyone's most hated place to be, right? We're like, I just need this growth curve to be forever. And like, does that really ever happen?
Does it happen? Gosh, entrepreneurship is such a wild journey, isn't it? I
It
mean,
is.
in every possible way, financially, emotionally, spiritually, time. I mean, the whole thing. And
Agreed.
we're not taught like how to handle and process these types of things. I mean, I don't know about you, but I feel
Yes.
like almost every part of entrepreneurship I've learned on my own or through someone else that I've had to ask.
Yeah. And to your point, or you feel really lonely in it because you assume you're the only one dealing with it, right? And like you see people who are super successful or who seem to be super successful, and you're like, oh, they've just had a smooth ride. Or like 10 years later, they'll be like, 2020 was really hard for me. I know that wasn't 10 years ago, but you know what I mean? Like they'll go back a few years and then tell you about how hard it was. But like in the moment, people aren't really sharing what's happening in real time. And so if when you're in it in real time, it can be really isolating.
Absolutely. And what's weird is no, it's not been 10 years since 2020, but we're closer to the 10-year mark than we are not. So
That is
that's
true. That is
that's
true.
that is bizarre in its own. Talk to me a little bit about your journey.
Yeah.
What brought you into this work? Give me all the
Yeah.
goods.
So I started my career in hospitality, restaurants, very traditional hospitality. 2.5 years in, I was like burnt out and I was like, this is traditional hospitality is not for me. But I did really love creating experiences for people. And so I kind of continued on in the hospitality space, but focusing more on things like co-working spaces and that sort of thing in New York City. And I kept doing that and really starting at really early stage companies and helping to really grow and scale them. And my last and most recent like formal job was at a company called The Wing, which was a co-working and membership community designed for women. I grew it from 3,000 to 12,000 members, 4 locations to 11 locations, and just experienced like, this massive, massive growth. And then speaking of 2020, 2020 hit, which was not a great year for in-person spaces. We shut down the company and it was kind of like, what is next? And I had a 9-month-old at home. And I was like, I think this is my moment to do something on my own. It had always kind of been in the background, simmering of like, I want to have my own business. I want that autonomy. I want to feel control over my time, my energy, my motivation, all of that. And so I told my husband, I was like, I'm going to start a business. We're going to give it 6 months to work. If it doesn't work at all, I will, basically find a job again. And it started to work very slowly. I also got pregnant. And so we were like, well, maybe we'll give it another 6 months, given that I'm about to have a baby now. And so after that first year, things had really proved out enough for me to feel comfortable continuing on. And that was really the beginning of my journey as an entrepreneur. And really, I started coming from this place of I've built these enormous companies. I have led growth at massive scale. I've learned a lot about what it means to grow a business. And I also know that there are people who are building smaller businesses who need this kind of infrastructure and support to achieve the outcomes that they're going for. And so I really started to focus on helping people with their growth strategies, subject matter experts who are like awesome at what they do, but then you're like, what, how are you getting it to the next level? And they're like, shrug emoji, like, I don't know.
I don't know. What I've been doing has working to a point. I
Yeah,
threw some spaghetti on the wall, found some stuff that stuck. I think that's very relatable for a lot of business owners because I
totally.
mean it's so much experiential time and stuff, right? You're just
Yeah.
kind of doing and trying and seeing what sticks, and then you do more of that thing.
Yeah. And also, I feel like you're kind of like, can't you just tell me what to do? Right. Like, I have like a theory that every business owner kind of wishes they also had a boss. And I feel like sometimes when I'm working with people, like, nobody ever says this explicitly, but what they kind of just want is somebody to come in and be like, do this, it will work.
Well, I mean, decision fatigue in business is
Totally.
is very real. And so
It
sometimes you're like, just tell me what to do and I'll do the damn thing.
Yeah. Like,
I mean,
I can execute. I just don't want to think about it anymore.
yeah, I that is not an uncommon thing for me to hear with some of the women that I work with. They're like, it's not that I don't want to do it. I'm tired of figuring out on my own. Just
Totally.
just help me know what to do next and I will go do that thing. I just don't want to think about it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And I get it. I totally get that.
So what are you seeing? Well, let's first maybe define like what is a revenue plateau. Just so we're all talking on the same page here.
Yeah. Okay. So generally speaking, what I find is that when plateau, I want to say it's like it's in the eye of the beholder in the sense of it depends how impatient you are. But generally speaking, we're talking about something where you're like, it's been a couple years and I like end the year at the same place more or less, and I can't figure out how to get past that, right? So that's like globally, I think how people calculate it. It can also show up in other ways of like, I've launched this program 5 times and every time I'm hovering around the same amount of enrollees. So there's kind of, I think, different ways to slice it, but generally speaking, I think it takes some time for people to get frustrated by the plateau, and it's usually a second year of more or less flat revenue that will get people to be like, okay, I was happy with the first year of this revenue because it was growth from the year before, but second year, I'm like, I don't want my third year to end up like this.
Gotcha. Okay. So it's this like something has worked. We've
Yep,
achieved a certain amount of success, but we've not been able to get past that. Like
exactly.
we keep hitting the same ceiling.
Exactly.
What have you found in your experience that kind of contributes to or causes that? I know that that's a wide answer with a lot of variables, but are there any kind of similarities or constants that you're seeing?
Yeah. So I think the most common thing, and this is going to sound painfully obvious, is that people are tending to do the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome.
Mm, yeah.
And that's no it's no like fault of, anyone's, but it's like you kind of figure out this like launch strategy. Let's say use the launching as an example. You figure out a launch strategy that works well enough for you. It will get, let's say it's a group program and you're trying to get 15 people and you get 10 people every time. Like it'll get you to that 10. And then it's kind of confusing about why you're not getting past it. And I think that what's usually behind that is overwhelm and not really knowing how to change it. And I think a lot of times you have to be able to one, dig into the data, right? Which is like, okay, if I just say simply, I was able to get 10 people to join this program with X number of new subscribers, how many new subscribers do I need to get to 15, right? And that math is pretty simple. But then I think where people get stuck in the overwhelm is like, but how do I actually get to that higher number of new subscribers before my launch? What can I do differently? How can I actually reach more people? And I think that's where when people feel that overwhelm, they start to like lily pad across all different sorts of growth strategies and then don't do one thing all the way and then kind of find themselves in that same cycle. So that's like the most typical thing that I see. I think the other reason, and this is very insidious for some people, is like people are overestimating how much time they have or energy they have to invest in their business. And
Hmm.
so again, I think that there's just like a lot of this external messaging of like it should just grow and like if you manifest it and really want it, it's just gonna like appear. And obviously that's not exactly how it works. And so I think sometimes we're limited by the actual amount of time and energy that we can invest in our business or other resources that we can invest in our business, like money, so on and so forth. And so then that is kind of what continues to be like a blocker to continued growth.
Yeah, I can see both of those very clearly. Like that overwhelm of what to do. It comes back to that earlier conversation.
Yeah.
It's not that I don't want to do it. I don't know what to do or how to get past this. And then that underestimating time and resources and energy,
Yeah.
guilty.
Oh my
like
God, so
like
guilty.
we want to play superhero and we
Yeah,
believe we can do it all. And listen, we're pretty awesome. We can do a lot of things, but we have to be realistic about what's possible.
totally.
And that
Totally.
kind of comparison culture that's happening and has been happening for a long time of it should just be easy and I 10x this and I did this amount of months and like it's just
Yeah.
very easy to reflect back and feel like, well, what am I doing wrong? Why is it so easy for them but it's so hard for me?
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Um, and so I think that it is also, when you get into that space and then you keep kind of achieving the same thing over and over, it can also be really hard to make any big shifts because you're scared that you're going to go backwards, right? There's
Mm,
always the risk. Like if you do something entirely differently, could it be worse? And so I think sometimes we also, and I'm always careful about this language because I don't know, I feel like sometimes people like finger point and blame themselves too much for things, but like sometimes we keep ourselves in the same place because taking that bigger leap can feel really scary. And so then you're like the devil that you know, but then you're still disappointed. So that's like a tricky cycle to break out of.
yeah, for sure. So if somebody's in one or both of these places, either in the
Yeah.
overwhelm of what to do or underestimating time or resources, what do you recommend to get past it? What are some
Yeah.
steps that we can take?
Yeah. Okay, well let's split them up. So, I think that in terms of the overwhelm of what to do, I think that in order to grow, you typically have to like what I've seen work best is like, okay, keep what you're doing so that you don't go backwards, right? Like throwing everything out and starting from scratch can be really tough. So you want to kind of maintain a baseline that you know you can control. And then really think about what is just one thing that you're going to opt into. That is not guaranteed to work. And I think this is the biggest challenge that people have is that there is no guarantee and you won't actually know that it hasn't worked for a long time, right? Your revenue is going to lag any sort of like action that you take. And so you have to be comfortable knowing that the plateau might last longer than you want it to. But rather than dabbling in a lot of things and never really knowing which works for you and which doesn't, you're going to go all in on one additional strategy, right? So let's just say you've always had like a webinar strategy for a launch, and you're like, okay, you know what? This time I'm also going to try hosting a bundle 6 months before my launch and seeing if that drives the subscribership that I need. I'm just using that as an example. That is the one thing that you're going to do so that then when you get your results, you can actually attribute the change to that one thing. If you don't get the results, then you can cross that thing off the list because it wasn't the thing that you needed to do. But if you dabble in everything, you can't actually have the attribution that you need to like repeat the actions that you want and need for that ongoing growth. So that's kind of, and I know, and nobody wants to choose one thing. And I tell people, just choose one thing. And they're like, but which one? And I think the answer to which one is always like, which one do you like find the balance between which one you think is going to be the most effective and which one you actually want to do? Like, definitely don't do things you think sound horrible,
Yeah. Yeah. I'll second that.
but also don't do things that like could maybe kind of sort of work, but you're really not sure. Like,
Right.
what do you really believe would have the most impact based on what you know about your audience and how they behave? Um, and I think that it's the delayed gratification and the fact that you are going to have to wait and see a little bit that can make people really uncomfortable. But because you're maintaining your baseline, what you can know for sure is most likely your baseline will remain. And so by protecting your baseline, I think that you can really maintain some inner peace, which is very important. And then be like, this is the experiment I'm running for this period of time.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Um, on the time, resources, energy piece, I think this is way harder and way more nuanced because, for example, I've worked with people who have what I call nap time businesses, right? Young children, they're primary parents, they are running a business during nap time after bedtime, and the time that they have to invest is limited. And they're like, but I should be growing. And sometimes it's really like a truth talk moment where it's like, maybe this is not your growth time. Maybe this is your plateau time, and we need to be okay with that because plateaus are kind of in the eye of the beholder, right? There are probably business owners who we see who are feel like they're in a plateau and would be like, I'd be cool plateauing there.
Yeah.
I'd be fine with that, and we all have a different number attached to that. But I think it's also just really important to know, do you feel like you should be growing or do you want to be growing? And I think sometimes when it is more resource bound, it's that tension between should and want that is like kind of confusing you in terms of where you want to be. Um, I think if you realize, no, I really do want to be growing and I really want to be doing this, whatever, I really want it to look different in the next 6 to 12 months. I think that's where you really have to think about, you kind of need to do like a time audit, right? Like, where am I actually spending my time of this? What parts of that time are actually serving me? What I find is that a lot of people, particularly when it comes to marketing, do a lot of activities that they actually don't see a return on, but they feel like they need to be doing.
Yeah.
I feel like social media is a big one on that one. But again, not true for everyone. It can look really different for different people. And so you kind of need to try, and it's not simple to do, but like try to place a almost like a dollar value on each thing that you spend your time on. And if the dollar value of what it's returning to you, right, the ROI is zero, that's kind of the thing to swap out for something that might have a higher ROI. And so that's kind of how I like to think about the time piece is this is not your moment to add more to your plate necessarily. This is the moment to think about what you can swap out so that you can do something else really well with that time and energy that you have kind of taken back and reassigned.
Yeah. I love consistently evaluating stuff.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
it's just really easy to get in the, I should do this thing and I'm going to start doing that thing. And, before you know it, you're doing a lot of things that you've absorbed or added to your plate.
Yeah.
And then you're tired and you don't have enough time to finish things, or you don't feel like you're doing things well enough for it to actually even catch traction. So just like zooming out, I like to do this every couple of months, honestly, and just look
Yeah.
at stuff. Like I literally just deleted my Pinterest for business the other day.
Oh,
Some
congratulations.
marketers might be like, what the hell were you thinking? I looked at the data. I looked at the
Yeah.
numbers. First, I looked energetically. I'm like, this is just one more thing, right?
Yeah.
Then I look at the numbers, and compared to anything else that I'm doing or utilizing, it's it's
Right.
it's pennies on the dollar. Do you know what I mean? And I'm like,
Mhm.
why are we going to keep this? Like, this is not changing my life. This is not adding a tremendous amount of value. And I have to let go of the, well, what if this takes off here? And it's like, it just, no. So I
Right.
deleted the account and I felt so much better. You know what I mean? But without spending some time, and it's really great to build this in your calendar, even to keep it
Yeah.
top of mind, to just evaluate the things that you're doing, even down into offers, like, what's working, what's not, what's adding value, what's draining my energy. Let's get real about
Totally.
this shit.
Totally. Totally. I could not agree more. And I think that like we forget that even just holding on to something like Pinterest, to use your example, can take up cognitive space, even
Yeah.
if we're not really doing much. Even if it's just like that moment during the week when you're like, oh, I need to add something to Pinterest or I need to pin something, or I don't even really know how Pinterest works. But like the point is like it's that moment in time. Even if you don't action it, that distraction is taking away from something that could be moving the needle for you.
Yes. I also really love that you pointed out the question of should I grow or do I want to grow?
Yeah.
Because is the plateau really a bad thing? I mean, I think that's like a bigger question we have to ask ourselves. Is this coming from an external pressure of I need to grow, I need to keep adding, I need to keep expanding, I need to keep pushing, or is it like
Right.
maybe I've actually achieved the level that I wanted at some point? Like
Yeah.
what is great enough, or what is working for me right now?
Yeah. And it's really interesting because I've worked with both and everybody comes to me for growth. Not everybody leaves with growth, right? And that is not necessarily a bad thing. I know some people who do what I would do would be like only talking about the growth pieces, but like I have worked with people who I worked with a photographer and she came to me and she was like, you know what? I don't really need to grow, but I do need to take 3 months off this winter to go skiing, and I don't want to take a hit to my income. So how do we make that happen? And I was like,
Mm,
let's figure it out.
love
Right.
it.
So that is kind of a form of growth, but it's not the same kind of simple view of growth that we typically would have. And then I've worked with people who are like, I have hit $180,000 a year for like 3 years straight. And like, I just want to get to 220. Like, I just need to break this like mark. And here's why. Here's what I want to do with that. Or here's what I need to do with that extra $40,000 a year. And so there's such a range, but it does require you to stop and think about it. And then there's other people who've come to me, right? These are people who are super clear one way or another. And then there's other people who come to me and they're like, in it for the growth. And then as we get into it, and as they also see what's required from a time, energy, resources perspective, they're like, you know what? I have a 4-year-old at home and I love all of this idea, but not right now, because right now it's not where I want to spend my time and energy. And so right now I'm going to be okay with this kind of steady state that I'm in. And I'm going to change that at a later date. But all of these are moments of realization that you can only get to when, to your point, you actually pause and take a look at what's happening.
Do you know what I've heard from nearly every single entrepreneur that I've met or worked with over the 19 years that I've been working with entrepreneurs is I feel isolated trying to build this on my own. Look, I know that you've heard the phrase it's lonely at the top, but it also comes with the phrase it's lonely along the way. Your friends, your family, your support circle, they want to encourage you along the way. They just don't know how to have the depth of the conversation that you really need to be able to move forward. It's not because they don't want to, they just don't know how to because it's not their world. That's one of the reasons that spaces like Auraline work so well, because we can peel back the layers. We can have the honest, raw conversations that you can't have anywhere else. We can go into the pockets where you can say what you need to say and get the critical, strategic feedback to know what to do about it. Growing your business is no longer isolating when you choose to be in the rooms that support you in the way that you need it the most. If you're tired of doing all this shit by yourself and you have decision fatigue and you just need somebody to help you figure out what to do so that you can go do it, then go to LauraAura.com/mastermind to learn more about Auraline and sign up today. Yeah, I love assigning to like, why do I want this growth?
Yeah.
Like putting, like you mentioned, what am I going to do with this 40,000? What does this 40,000 mean to me?
Yeah.
Is this giving me leverage? Is this allowing me to hire somebody? Is this giving me a vacation? Like what is this? Or am I doing it because I'm trying to hit some, theoretical mark that makes me feel successful?
Right. Totally. Totally. And then even if it is that theoretical mark that makes you feel successful, then own that,
Yeah.
right? Be
Yeah,
like,
there's
nope, this
nothing
isn't
there's nothing
entirely an ego move, but I'm going for it.
yeah. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it as long as you are aware of that
Yeah.
and you just own it. Like,
Yeah.
okay, that if that number is what makes you feel like this is my made it number. Cool.
Yeah.
Let's do that. That can absolutely fuel your why. You also brought up this really important point about the season and being honest
Hmm.
about the season.
Hmm.
When I think about back when I started my first business when I was 6.5 months pregnant. So I can understand and relate to you. if I when I think back to those early years of a brand new business and a brand new human in the world, trying to accomplish what I do now would be absolutely impossible.
Right.
And you just have different time, you have different energy, you have different capacity. And I think it's just so really important to acknowledge, like, don't compare your season to someone else's. And I know you all hear this all the time, but seriously think about this. Like, if you're a brand new mom or have young kids at home and you're comparing yourself to somebody with no children, I, the
Right.
time is just different. Yes, we all have the same 24 hours in the day, but they're not spent the same.
Right. And it's all a trade-off, right? Like I had with my younger children and still now, like I made a choice to have childcare and to, invest more time in my work because that felt important to me. But there are also people who are like, I want to spend this time in these years with my kids. And like, if that's what you want, that is great and celebrate that and know that everything is going to come at a cost, right? So like my choice to have more childcare and work more comes at a cost of like the amount of hours that I spent with my kids. And like that's a trade-off decision that I had to make. And the same is true if you do the inverse. And neither is necessarily right or wrong. It's what's right or wrong for you. But like, I know that people are like, time is a construct. I'm like, no, actually, I don't know. I don't think that's true. Like, I'm like, there's a certain amount of like reality to that. And like, when you know that and when you don't blame yourself for that, right? Like, I should be doing more in this window of time. I find it to be incredibly freeing because then you can let yourself off the hook a little bit one way or another.
Yeah. A lot of this is a mind game. I mean, it really
Always.
is. So how do you work with
Yes.
people to kind of work with that like mental gunk that comes along with a plateau or a season that you can't seem to break past and through?
Yeah. Um, it's a great question. I think that I generally speaking try to lead with empathy. I'm like very clearly and overtly, I'm like, I'm not a therapist. I'm not really a mindset person, other than the fact that I'm a human being in the world that has dealt with my fair share of shit and like am willing to like give you space to deal with yours. But I actually think that's sometimes really nice for people, right? Because it's like, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm not trying to take it away. I'm just like, yeah, it's real and it's hard. And like, there are people who I'm like, maybe you should talk to a therapist or maybe you should talk to a life coach or like, you might want to like dig into this more. Um, and then I think where I like thrive is kind of taking all the like cuckoo thoughts we're all having and being like, how do we make a strategy out of this? And so there are times where I will have a client, I'm thinking of one person in particular, she's an interior designer, and she was like freaking out. Her like caregiver was out for like 3 weeks and I don't even know what happened. And then she thought maybe this caregiver was never going to come back. And I was like, you can't actually run your business until you figure out your childcare situation because your children will always come first, whether you want it to or not. Like you can be pissed about it, you can be annoyed about it, but like that will always be the case. So let's stop talking about your business right now and let's start talking about the strategy for your home life because that is
Mm.
going to be the unlock to your business. And I think that is, at least again, this is just because of my skill set and how I focus my energy when that I'm delivering to my clients. But like I generally believe there's like a strategic path through a lot of things, right? And I'm always like, how do we get, what is the simplest way to solve this problem that is going to reduce our overwhelm as much as possible? So that is like kind of my approach. And then I think the other piece is we really need to give people space to feel their feelings. And I think oftentimes I'm not a toxic positivity person. Maybe I'm like a toxic negativity person. I don't even know. But I'm like, it's real. Like sometimes I'm like, yeah, it just sucks. Like I don't think we need to say anything more than that or less than that. And I think that can be really comforting to people.
It is. We're quick to want to move through those sucky feelings and emotions because obviously they don't feel great.
Right.
Um,
They suck.
but I'm always they do suck. I'm also a huge fan of and honestly just a user of just feel the shit and it will pass.
Yeah.
Like the more we brush it off, the more we ignore it, the more we dismiss that, hey, yes, I want to hit that number and I'm not hitting it and I'm bummed out about that. I've been trying this for 6 months and it's not taking off. This sucks, right? Like, okay,
Yeah.
let's feel that all the way to the bottom. Let's
Yeah.
let's let's drain the fucking well here.
Yeah.
Because when you do that, you release the energy, you clear your mind, your body feels better because you're not storing it. We can't just jump from strategy to strategy to strategy without acknowledging the inner stuff that's happening alongside that.
Totally. Totally. Um, yeah. And like naming it.
Yeah.
It took me a
Yeah.
long time to figure out what feelings I was feeling. I'll tell you that much. Gotta,
We're not exactly taught how to do those things. I mean, that's
that is
that's
true.
that's not part of the majority of upbringing or education. So
Facts.
we're often figuring those things out as we go. And then, in business, then it's like, oh, I don't want to look like I don't have my shit together and I need to be able to show up for clients. And, it gets
Yeah,
it gets really messy.
it does. It really does.
I know a magic question that we probably don't have a magic answer to, but maybe you can give us a little framework around is how long do I keep trying something before I deem it not successful? How long do I
Yeah.
experiment with this? How long do I hold on to something before I'm like, no, actually I just need to maybe let this go.
Yeah. Love this question. And like you predicted, the answer is kind of like depends. But in general, if I'm working with someone and we're testing out some new tactics or strategies, Um, what we're identifying in the strategy building is what the leading indicators are and what the lagging indicators are, right? So I mentioned earlier, revenue is always going to lag. Like we find out about the revenue that we're making as like the last result along the journey of somebody kind of coming through our marketing funnel and ecosystem. And so then the question becomes, what are the leading indicators? What are the early signs that this is working? Um, and so I'm going to use like a specific example because I think that it will make it more concrete. But earlier I mentioned maybe you're going to test doing bundles. I've never hosted my own bundle, but like I'm using that as an example. Theoretically, I would imagine that if you were hosting a bundle, you'd be like, okay, yeah, I want to reach out to some people who have bigger audiences than me so that I can reach more new people and they will get more subscribers and so on and so forth. So, a really early leading indicator on that would just be that you're reaching out to people with bigger audiences and they're not interested necessarily in participating. And you have a choice point there of like, do I go for more people who have smaller audiences or do I pivot? So that would be like one really early leading indicator. Um, I think that that's kind of one example. I'm trying to think of another more concrete example. I had a launch that went terribly in that it sold zero spots. It was my seventh launch of a program and it sold zero spots. And if I had taken my own advice, I would have noticed that when I was sending out early survey stuff around this particular launch, which I had always done in prior launches, I wasn't getting any responses on those surveys.
Hmm.
And in the past, I had always gotten responses. So another early indicator that something about the launch strategy this time wasn't working. And I needed to, because I wasn't getting that early engagement, that would be an indicator towards later sales. So I should have pivoted my strategy. Hindsight 2020. But like the point is, there usually are going to be some early signs that you're not getting the stickiness that you want or that you need. And then you can start to make estimates about like actually what the sales will look like on the back end. Um, if you are thinking about, let's say, growing your list or your audience in the lead up to a launch, like we had mentioned earlier, and you're seeing that like you're not really getting the numbers that you think you need to hit to sell that 15 spots was the number that I said earlier, that might be your sign to delay when you actually open cart until you get to that number. So we are getting early hints, and I think sometimes we get so attached to the strategy that we forget to like again pause and take a look at what's happening. But those early hints are usually really guiding you in the right direction towards the outcomes that you want.
Yeah. You know what came through as you were saying that? I'm like, this is really about our own pride. This is
Yeah.
our own pride and the attachment. Like, I mean, I think that this is true for almost everyone. we put a lot of time and effort and love into the things that we create, right? Like
Yeah.
there's excitement, you mean well with it, like you really can see how this can help people or change something for the better, and so we get really emotionally attached to the things that we're putting into the world, rightfully so. I mean, it's a product of us.
Yeah.
That I can so much that I can see how we would skip over said early indicators because
Yeah.
we don't want to believe that it's not right, it's not the right time, it's not the right offer, it's not the right audience, insert, a million different reasons, but we don't we
Totally.
ignore it because our pride is like, no, but I want this to work.
Yeah, I need this to work. Absolutely. And I think it's also just sometimes the overwhelm can make us a little bit stuck of like back to that feeling of like, if I don't do this, what do I do?
Hmm. Yeah.
And so I think that can also be really challenging. And so then you're like, I might as well just like, this feels like I can control it. I know what to do. I know what the next steps are. But then obviously, if you end up disappointed in the outcomes, you will most likely end up regretting that.
Right. Yeah, for sure. You shared a quote with me too. Growth doesn't come from doing more, it comes
Yep.
from doing the right things consistently.
Mm, yes.
That's powerful. I mean, that's a habit shift in its own.
Yeah.
And it comes back to what you were saying earlier, like pick something, one
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
and nurture it, give it the time, pay attention to the data, look at the numbers, like really kind of emotionally detach from it a little bit
Yeah.
and look at the facts and keep doing it
Yeah.
until it proves that it's not the right time or season for it.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I think that, I say this a lot. I'm like, you got to do the right work at the right time. And it's very much tied to that, right? Like, and I think that sometimes we feel like we have to do more. And I generally believe like most growth strategies are going to work for anyone if you like go deep enough and, keep continuing to improve and hone and all of that. But what tends to happen, which kind of speaks to your question of like, when is it time to pivot, is we're not seeing the results that we want, or we're not sure if it's working because we haven't necessarily even like defined the metrics that we need to associate to it. So then we're like, that's probably not working. I'm going to try something else rather than actually really believing like, and I think this is also interesting like in the online business space, everybody's selling a different growth strategy. And they're like, this one works better, this one works better. They've all worked for different people. That is just proof that like most growth strategies will work. It's just which one can you do consistently and can you do for long enough to see the results from?
That's the thing. Consistently and long enough.
Consistently long enough.
It's discipline.
Yeah. And
This
discipline
is
sucks. I had a coach who used to say like making money is boring, making a lot of money is really boring. And I always like that always cracked me up because it's kind of true. And like entrepreneurs by nature are also in the pursuit of novelty. And there's a lot of tension between that pursuit of novelty and the repetition that we need.
for sure. You also talk a little bit about focus strategies to unlock momentum. What are
Yep.
some of those strategies that help you like stay on that pace, stay on that cadence, stick with it instead of bouncing around to a bunch of stuff?
Yeah. So I think you need to have a sense of who you are and how you work, right? Like I said, this pursuit of novelty. That doesn't mean that you can't do any fun new stuff, but really deciding like what are the one or two things that you're really going to commit to? And like then giving yourself the wiggle room if that's what you need to like test, explore, get creative. Like all of that can still happen, but you just want to make sure that there's a couple things that are in your roadmap and in your path that are really kind of driving your business forward. And what that looks like is very much tied to your goals, but let's just say your goals are audience growth, right? You want to think about what are the one or two things that I'm doing regularly to grow my audience? Am I, doing guesting on podcasts a lot, or am I participating in bundles or, whatever? I'm just thinking of some low-hanging fruit things. And so I think that is really kind of like the big piece because you need time for the flywheel to take off. And I think that that is hard because it's like I'm trying to figure out like an analogy for this, but obviously I can't think of one on the spot. Um, But it's always like a little bit sticky. And then at some point you're doing something and you're like, oh, wow, like I've been doing this for long enough. I've been investing in list growth for long enough that now every day I log into my email service provider and I see that I have new subscribers coming in from all the places that I've put myself in the world. But if you think about like going around the internet and like Hansel and Gretel leaving breadcrumbs of yourself all over. It takes time to like leave all of those breadcrumbs. And if you don't actually continue to do it, like the wind will come and like blow them away. But when you hit that critical mass, the wind can't blow them away anymore because they keep kind of like refilling themselves. And so I think it's just kind of thinking about it. I like that visual, right? Of like, where else am I and how am I visible in a lot of different places so that like it keeps coming back to me, at least from like an audience growth perspective. Um, but I think that's usually where people stop because if you look at if you look at like anyone who talks about their email list growth, and as an example, and I think this is less true on social because of virality, but if you look at list growth, it almost always follows this like hockey stick pattern, right? Where it's like slow, 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 big curve up. And most people don't let themselves get past this slow, slow, slow piece. And so they never experience the big curve up because that slow, slow, slow piece. I mean, you said that you were 6.5 months pregnant, which was, a few years ago based on what you were talking about the age of your child.
It's been a minute.
It's been a minute. Like that early phase can even be 3 or 4 years. And you have to just be like, in some ways, sometimes I'm like, I just have to put blinders on and just be like, I'm going to see this one through. But I'm also going to experiment on the side so that I can have like fill my dopamine hits where I need it.
Yes. I think this is a really good reminder that entrepreneurship is a long game.
Yeah.
Business success is a long game. It doesn't mean that you can't have a quick hit on something or something just lands quickly or you see a
Yeah.
big spike in something. Yeah, of course, all of that is possible. But we have to be really realistic with ourselves that like the sustainable growth that you really want, why you got into
Yeah.
part of why you got into business is not to have these, peaks and valleys all the time. That's unpredictable. It's to have a steady life, to have the income or the wealth that you desire, to have a business that feels good and doesn't drain you to death. Like that,
Yeah.
we forget about that when we're seeing how everyone else is having this like, seemingly overnight success kind of crap.
Right.
It's
And
not
it's
it's
like,
not
yeah, it
crap.
was
You
overnight
know what I
seven
mean?
years later. Yeah, no, but it was overnight 7 years later.
Exactly. Exactly.
It was like on day, I don't know, 5,000, it was overnight.
Yeah,
But there was
exactly.
like 4,999 nights before that.
Yes. And that's why the conversations like this matter,
Yeah.
because sometimes you just need to even hear this to be like, okay, I got this. I got a few things that I can really, make some small adjustments. There's nothing that you shared today that's like flipping tables over. We're
No.
just we're just turning the dial a little bit. Stick with
Yeah.
that and just know that you're in this for the long haul.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think listen to your audience. Pay attention to the people who are buying from you. Look at your favorite clients and customers. What has their journey in your ecosystem been like? Do more of that because that's what's working for you and in your business. And it might not be at supersonic speed, but it's working.
Yeah. I love that. You've already got proof in your hands.
Yeah,
Go deeper in dissecting and what worked there.
exactly.
My business coach always says like look for signs of life.
Yeah.
Whether that's what worked with already getting people in and what you're putting out there. Like is there signs of life? Is there movement? Is there activity? Are there clicks? Is there people coming over to the web? Like are things moving? And if not, then we've got some indicators there.
Yeah, totally.
Amazing. Frenchie, this is a great conversation and I appreciate you going there with me because we have to talk about these things to normalize and humanize it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, man, we get lost on our own in
So
our own little
lost.
pockets of the world, don't we?
In our own little brains. Our brains are just tricking us all the time.
All the time. What's the best way for everyone to find and connect with you?
You can find me on social at Frenchie Ferenczi. I also have a mini course, which is all about building out your revenue roadmap, and kind of pathways to break through plateaus if and when you're ready to do that. I know you'll share the link to that. So yeah, those are the two places to find me, and always feel free to reach out, DM, ask questions. I'm here for all of it.
Awesome. We've got all of Frenchie's links in the show notes below. And I've got to know, what does gutsy mean to you?
Gutsy to me is just like taking the leap, even if you're not sure about what you're going to land on.
That plateau shit, that's not a good time, is it? But it's also information. It's telling us that, hey, we're ready for something new. We're ready to do something differently. And it becomes kind of this Rubik's Cube of unpacking where to focus, where to put your time and your energy, and so much about getting real with yourself about what it is that you actually want and why you want it in the first place. I feel like this is one of those double listen type of episodes. Maybe grab a new notebook, go back through it, or the next time you hit a plateau, this episode will be here for you. If we are not already friends on social, what are we doing? Come find me. My handle is @LauraAura. Send me a DM and say hello, and until I see you next time, stay gutsy.